So, Larry, what do you want to tell us about habit, posture, and emotions and the relationship between those things?
Habits are something that we learned a long time ago. Whether that's when you learned to type and the posture you were sitting in, how you felt in that class or following that program, and how those things become incorporated into what we do later. You could think of a habit as something that you learned so well a long time ago that it gets in the way of making a choice now. It's just your default option.
I have a brilliant example of habit. It's holding a pen. You see people holding pens like that. You could not drag it away from them. They are like, and then doing all these weird things with their faces as they're holding a pen. And I suspect it's because some teacher said, you're not doing that right, and made the student feel like a failure. And as a consequence, they get tenser and tenser and tenser. And there's a lot of problems with pen holds. I think as a result of exactly what you're saying, people learn this in the first grade, I think. So they're
Well,
6 years old.
it's how you hold the pen. It's how you felt when you were learning to hold the pen. Whoever you copied, like you wanted to do it like them or you didn't want to be like them. And it's not just the pen. If you needed glasses and you didn't have them, or if you were frustrated or scared, all of that gets folded in and we reproduce, the whole pattern comes back. And habits, we get used to them, so we don't notice them. They're other people, like what you were saying about how other people hold pens, a habit is what somebody else notices about you. Or just when somebody is, pantomiming you, you think, wow, that's me? Over the years of working with people, I realized that it's not just that we learn a way to move, but with that way of moving, with that motion comes emotion, that these things are wedded together. And one of the things I'm interested in is how is it by changing our physical attitude, our posture, the way we hold ourselves, how does that affect our mood and our attitude?
I think those things can be very integrated with the experience of repetitive strain injury, because sometimes even the thought of using the tools that have caused your injury will be enough to provoke symptoms in people. They get, just thinking about using a mouse or a keyboard will trigger symptoms. And I think that's part of what you're talking about, Larry, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Right? There's the activity itself. And if you've been doing that for a long time and it creates pain, then when you think about doing it, you have the response to that too. So for some people look, pain is exhausting. You're vigilant. You want to prevent it. And that is incredibly tiring. And so after a while, that can become daunting, depressing, frustrating. All these things get mixed up into one package. I think the way to address it is not necessarily psychologically, but physically through how we embody the moment, how we breathe, the sensations that we have and the feelings that come with it. They're all encoded in our body. It's hard to have an emotion and not change how you hold yourself and move.
Do you think changing how you hold yourself and move can sort of reverse that exhaustion and the symptoms that go along with it?
The question I ask when I'm working with somebody is, how are the ways you are holding yourself and moving causing or contributing to the problem? If you move in a different way, you'll end up in a different place and you'll feel differently about it. And I think an old-fashioned way of thinking about attitude isn't just your perspective on something, it's how you carry yourself. When somebody looks at you and says, don't give me that attitude, they mean how you're physically responding in the moment. You are communicating your attitude by your expression. And that's a whole body thing. Those things are encoded together and they change together.
And so explain to me how your approach, which is the Feldenkrais method, addresses these things.
What is special about the work that we do is we start with movement. Since movement is connected to what we're sensing, how we're thinking, what we're feeling, if you change how you're moving, you can affect everything else. Feldenkrais lessons happen in two ways. Either you move yourself, it's kind of like an exercise, or somebody else moves you. Either way, they're addressing the underlying neurophysical coordination of movement. Muscles don't think for themselves. Your brain coordinates how you move. And your movement is the expression of everything that's happening in your brain. It comes out through the way our muscles move our skeleton. And then that includes ideas and emotions, along with just getting things done in the world. They're all fit together. My job is to help people discover how their habits get them into trouble and to find ways of moving that often we remember, oh, I used to move differently, but it's like it's a distant memory. You don't know how to step into it. You have lost that capacity. It's still somewhere in your nervous system. And what the Feldenkrais method is designed to do is to help you break those habits and regain the abilities you had before and develop ones you never had. Emotions are expressed through muscular activity. And just like we have habits of posture, we have habits of emotion. And my job when I'm working with somebody is to help them undo those habits so they don't feel trapped by them, so that they're not responding in the moment based on what happened in the past. That connects to like what we were talking about, like how you learn to write or type. The situations in which you're doing those things. If you're working under duress or for someone you don't like or in a job that's unpleasant, that's going to become part of how you feel and how you move. All of that kind of gets tied together in a messy knot. And the question is, how do you unravel that? What I love about this work is we start with the simplest thing, which is how you're moving right now.
I'm so happy that you talked about working for someone you don't like, because that's a risk factor you can't do much about. It's one of those hidden risk factors for repetitive strain injury, because you're automatically going to be on guard. You're automatically carrying more muscular tension than you would be if you felt relaxed, like your boss was on your side, had your back, understood you. It's very difficult to work for a difficult, demanding boss and not feel it from the pit of your stomach through your entire musculoskeletal system. So I'm really glad you brought that point up, Larry.
Feldenkrais pointed out when I was studying with him that he thought it was interesting that we talk about pent-up anger, but we don't talk about pent-up joy. And there's this idea that somehow emotions are they're like it's like a balloon where you build up pressure and all of a sudden it releases. I think there's a different way of understanding how we move and how we feel, and that it's possible to learn. It's possible to change how you feel by changing how you move in the moment. By changing, it's pretty hard to feel happy if you're in this position. Right? It's if you're slouched over and it's like you can tell how somebody feels by how they live in themselves. And I think what we're seeing from the outside, but we don't know what it's like from the inside, it gives us a clue about what's happening with the person. And you can tell when somebody feels better because they physically change. And so why not start with the physical, with learning to be more comfortable in your skin, with finding out not what is the right posture, but how can you sit and feel easy and supported. If you have an injury, often that seems really far away, if not impossible. The work that we do is about not just making that possible, but finding out that it's your birthright. You can feel comfortable and you can move from there. And that's a great starting place. I'll tell you a story. One of my favorite things about my job is when I'm somewhere and I, like in the grocery store, and I hear somebody the next aisle over telling them about the work that we did. Recently, I was working with someone who is an arborist who works in trees and whatever. And I heard him telling, I don't know who he was talking to, but I heard him telling somebody, yeah, I went to see this guy and he asked me, well, what my problem is. And I told him how my back hurt. And he asked me, well, when does that happen? And we figured out that it had to do with when I was using this particular kind of saw, and he watched me move, and then he taught me how to move in such a way that it doesn't hurt anymore. So I can do my job and it feels good.
But you had another story I remember from the training. It was so great. You were teaching a guy who couldn't bend his knee how to get up and down off the floor, keeping that leg straight. And I remember thinking, how could you possibly do that? But you did it. And so that's one of the brilliant things about the method is it shows you how to roll over without using your hands, how to lift your arms up without feeling strain in your shoulders. So many people, they just are really challenged by lifting their arms up. But after a Feldenkrais lesson, it's easy. If it's like nothing, the arm just flew up. How did that happen? So do you remember that story about the guy with the leg?
Several years ago, I was teaching a course in a rehabilitation hospital. And as part of the course, they asked me to work with one of the patients there. This gentleman had had a stroke, and so one side of his body was really rigid. And he had gotten use of his arm back, but his leg was stiff as a board. And he had been working on this in therapy every day, stretching it, moving it, trying to get it to bend, and it just didn't get any better. And so I asked him, well, why does that make a difference to you? He said, I'd like to be able to get on the floor and play with my grandkids. And I said, okay, if I could teach you how to get on the floor and get back up, of course, without bending your leg, would that be okay? And he looked pretty puzzled. So did all the other people in the room who were watching. But I thought, if the Feldenkrais method is there are hundreds of lessons, and they're drawn from how children develop movement. They're drawn from martial arts, from yoga, from all sorts of sources. And I thought of a lesson which comes from a judo move where you go from standing to lying down and back up again, keeping the leg straight the whole time. So I had that kind of in the back of my head as something I could teach. That's the great thing about how we're designed to move. We're designed to move with ease, with comfort, and to move effectively in the world. And there are lots of ways of moving. Sometimes it's not a matter of learning how to do this in the expected way, the way everybody else does it. There are other solutions.
It springs to mind that one of the things with repetitive strain injury is weight bearing on the wrists. It can be very painful, excruciating for some people. But the Feldenkrais method has ways of spiraling down to the floor. You never use your hands. You learn how to use your body to get you up and down off the floor without placing any strain at all on your upper extremity. And I think a lot of people with RSI would really benefit from learning those lessons because they can learn how to use themselves without causing additional strain or re-injury to the wrist, elbow, whatever, shoulder.
Whether it's RSI or hypermobility or spasticity, whatever it is, the Feldenkrais method has, what we're going to do is find a movement solution that fits the difficulties that you have. I'm teaching a workshop called The Power Within, and it is about how we have this capacity within ourselves to change how we live in the world, how we live in our skin, to be more grounded, to feel supported, to move easily. And this is about how do you connect with this innate capacity to change yourself. It's 5 days in a row of Feldenkrais lessons. We do 2 lessons a day. It's like a half-day mini workshop. The lessons are recorded. You'll get access to the videos of the, and we're teaching it online. So one person signs up, but you're welcome to invite your partners, friends, family, whoever else, housemates, whoever else is around to participate. And it happens twice. We have 2 different schedules, so you can come once or both times. We do that so it's accessible no matter where you live in the world.
And Larry, tell us who it's for. Do you have to have past experience with movement, or could somebody who's just interested feel comfortable joining you?
This workshop is for everybody.
And if you happen to be on vacation and can't make the full workshop, is there some way to access it once it's over?
You can do it from wherever you want because it's online, and you will get the video, you'll get access to the videos, and you will get access to the videos on our website, so you'll be able to watch it whenever you want.
I will put a link to the details about this workshop in the details below, and you can go to Larry's website and find out more about this. So there you have some great information about the Feldenkrais method. I teach Feldenkrais lessons every Friday. I also teach them privately. So if you're interested in taking a lesson with me, contact me through the comments below, and I will give you more information about that. And if you're interested in taking a mini lesson, watch the video that's coming up next.